Imagine for a second you found a benefit even greater than saving your marriage.
I've seen the benefits of it. It's not just a win; it's to win her heart back. And the way she looks at me now is I haven't seen that in a while.
Wow.
It's literally changed every square inch of my core.
Now, this came after Mike applied these three habits with his wife. Before Michael turned his failing marriage into the biggest win of his life, he started here.
The woman I'd been with for 18 years and loved was didn't want to be with me anymore. So that was the challenge that hit me square in the face. And so that never happened to me in my life.
To say that Michael was a successful and courageous businessman is actually a pretty big understatement. He got 3 separate companies off the ground and worked tirelessly to make them flourish. But in all the lucrative contracts he negotiated over the years, his marriage got the brunt end of the deal. He worked crazy long hours most of the time, and the moments he was around, he wasn't really there. He and his wife were like these 2 ships just passing by in the night, just casual exchanges here and there, eventually roommates. And the gradual empty passing by left his wife yearning for more connection. Whenever she voiced her concern, he would dismiss it with, empty reassurance, saying things like, honey, everything's okay. The company just needs my attention. It's a quarterly end right now. Just any excuse he could make saying, I will make it right to you. Her feelings of disconnection slowly turned into criticism, arguing, and resentment. And both Michael and his wife suffered from I'm rightist all the timeist. It's basically saying that they were super stubborn with each other. And Michael's results-driven mindset made him determined to be the victor in every argument. Now, most of the time, his wife would eventually just give in, and in Michael's eyes, everything just seemed to go back to normal. But the whole time he was completely clueless to the catastrophic damage being taken place. And his marriage suffered the death of 1,000 cuts.
In real life, I was a successful guy, ran a business and ran a couple businesses and could manage things during the day. But it seemed that this threw me for a loop because I thought everything was okay in my home life. I knew there were some challenges and I didn't know how to overcome them. And I wasn't brave enough. I wasn't secure enough in myself to try to pinpoint those because I couldn't recognize them. Yeah. I just glossed over them like they didn't exist. And so I was unaware about a lot of the things that I had wrong with me.
Michael hadn't the slightest clue of what was going on behind the scenes until one day his wife pulled the rug out from under him saying, we should separate. It completely blindsided him to his core. It was like a plummeting stock in the stock market, right? And when he tried to fix the marriage and convince her using logic, it was way too late.
I was comfortably numb. I didn't know what I didn't know. So there was no way for me to really try to understand how I could fix it. I was afraid, couldn't admit that. So having all these feelings and not being able to communicate with her was the biggest challenge for me. So I had to go to try to get answers elsewhere because I tried the first part, like, what's wrong? Tell me what happened. Tell me how to fix this, because that's how a business deal works, right? What's broken in the relationship? Where did we go wrong? So those were fundamental principles that I used every day and ingrained in our company and the people that work for us. And so that didn't work. It actually angered her and pushed her, it drove her away.
When the painful reality set in, Michael was broken. All the success he spent years achieving was no match for the emotional bankruptcy that now defined him.
I couldn't trust myself anymore. I came to a place where everything I'd built, everything I'd learned, everything I'd tried, everything I thought I was had failed.
If Michael knew he didn't have the answers, he was determined to find them somewhere else. He turned this knock on the head into a knock on the open door. He searched online and came across some of my videos. And he started absorbing all the lessons.
I really admired, Josh's confidence when I watched some of the initial videos that I was recommended to look at. And then it just seemed that he had such a compelling story and had made such a case for so many things that just resonated with me.
Yeah.
About my circumstance. So that made it easy for me to just say, okay, I'll take the next step.
Michael took immediate action. And his first step towards real happiness led to a profound truth that kicked off serious change. The first habit, in Michael's words, was also the biggest factor in winning his wife back. If a husband ignores this, then any attempt to save his marriage will fail every time.
Recognizing that the number one thing for me is that I was responsible for the direction of our relationship and the not all the content, but certainly the management of that content. And I didn't understand that at all. And so once I got to that place, the rest of it became a lot easier for me because I could launch from that, and that's how I learned in business too. So it kind of helped me, but it helped me launch that you have to recognize your failure, and you have to immediately just clear the deck and then start over and rebuild with something that works. That was the big thing, was owning it, and owning it through the whole process. Owning it was two things for me. I've seen it before. You can own it from the temporary, like, oh, I did this, and you're like, okay, what's next? That's not what I did. I said in every single category of every module that I listened to and learned was that I owned every aspect of what was going on in our relationship. Yeah. And I accepted full responsibility for it.
Michael didn't just admit where he went wrong. He took a radical ownership. Now, this allowed him to start fixing his marriage by himself. Think of your life as a story, for example. You're writing the story, and as the author of your narrative, you have the power to shape the plot, to develop the characters, and determine the ending. This starts by taking full ownership over your actions and every part of that journey that got you there. In the thick of the conflict, the hero never displaces their responsibility. That would be equivalent to giving your pen or typewriter to your wife. And since you are the enemy in her eyes at this point, it wouldn't be a good ending for you. By taking radical ownership, you have power and control over what happens. Michael went from being the CEO in his business and applied the same skill set that he mastered in that domain over with his marriage. Setting the vision, making decisions, all these masculine behavior qualities you must have to make her fall back in love with you. He became accountable for setting the vision and making important decisions and ensuring the success of his company. When we take radical ownership, we open our eyes to a new perspective. We can see things we couldn't see before. And that ties perfectly into the second habit. When we turn our eyes to ourselves and our own perspectives change. Here's how Michael describes it.
I now recognize that what she did for me gave me an amazing gift. And then the biggest gift of all is when I got to go through the program with you guys and learn all the subtle little details. And some days I didn't want to hear it, Rock. I didn't want to look at it. I just I don't want to hear this crap. And it's like, wait a second. This sounds like the old guy is not dead yet. Mm-hmm. That old way is still hanging on. I'm going to push past it. I forced myself to push past it. I disciplined myself to push past that and really listen and take a time out. Josh said, just breathe, just relax, breathe in, breathe out, and just relax. And then I turned the program back on and I got a different perspective.
What Michael described reminds me of an inspiring story. A client of mine, Frank, was the CFO of a media company. Now, he was in his late 50s and his job was pretty demanding. It left little time for personal hobbies. Yet jogging was important to him, not only for his physical health, but his mental health as well. It was also challenging. Dragging himself out of bed early every single morning was a challenge. The second habit was keeping at it when he'd run out of breath, and every ounce of his being wanted to quit and head home. One day when he was jogging, and he wasn't happy about it, but he forced himself to begrudgingly continue and sweat it out on the pavement. As he was trudging up that hill in his neighborhood, he passed an elderly woman who was walking slowly. When he passed her, she said, "Well, aren't you lucky?" He stopped and looked back and said, "What was that?" She said, "You get to run. I used to love to run, but I can't do that anymore. My body won't let me." This stunned Frank, stopping him literally in his tracks. He realized in that moment that one day he would be like the elderly woman, unable to run anymore. This completely changed his mindset. It was the difference between saying, "I have to do this," versus "I get to do this." It seems simple, but from then on, he viewed running as a privilege. The effort was still challenging, but mentally, it became effortless. And this is what happened to Michael. He was able to see in hindsight that the work he had put into himself and that changed, it was a gift. He could recognize the reward. The space his wife took was even a reward, even though it didn't seem like it at the moment.
So what she's saying now is that we don't have the cycle of, rinse, repeat, getting into difficult discussions that go nowhere and then blow up and go different emotional reactionary type, directions. That's not there anymore. We haven't had one. She said, "I can't even think of one since I knew that you were starting the program." And she recognized early on when we weren't together is that, there is something different going on here. I can see it.
If you embrace the pain of the work it takes to make real change, it becomes easier and your purpose becomes clear. You recognize the rewards that come from the roughness, right? And this program Michael devoted himself to. Each aspect of it was a gift he gave to himself.
Everything's gotten better because of this program. This hasn't just helped my relationship. This has changed my entire life in a way I can't even possibly repay, other than to just use what I've learned. And the toolbox is so much better.
But as effective as this toolbox was for Michael, it didn't happen overnight. And that's what the third habit talks about. Michael confesses that at first he struggled with controlling his emotions. He failed most of his wife's tests, and it would be easy for anyone in Michael's position to lose patience and just call it quits. But listen to what happened with Michael instead.
I have not been disappointed in any part of this journey, other than understanding some of the milestones, which I just persisted through your program. Just keep doing this, keep doing this, keep doing this. And then boom, there it was. It showed up. The tests were there, the benefits, the upside of the test, the positive results from the test, and me responding accordingly.
You see, Michael kept at it until his eyes were opened. And not just opened, but wholly enlightened.
And believe it or not, I have now embraced our tests. I see them when they come, just like that. I see it in a second, and I'm like, oh, I got this. You know,
you're like excited about them now. It's like you're like welcoming them. You're like, yeah, bring it on. I can do this.
I don't want to say like, hey, you just gave me clues. This is awesome. But that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so it reveals two things. One, that's where she's at, and that she's testing my framework a little bit. And then two, she's giving me pearls of things that I can do to help her, to nurture and help her build our relationship and draw her closer to me and draw me closer to her. And now I love it because I look for those every day. I can't wait for them. It's almost like a kid in a candy shop. She actually said that. She goes, you look like a kid in the candy shop when you get around me.
He went from confused, frustrated, failing his wife's tests, always having to be right, like a kid who just doesn't get his way, to a kid in a candy shop, passing her sweet tests in good taste, mastering his emotions and harnessing his inner strength. Much like the infamous scene of The Karate Kid 1984, when in a season, Mr. Miyagi teaches a young Daniel to wax the car, saying repeatedly, wax on, wax off, right? Then he teaches him how to paint the fence, how it's all on the wrist, up and down. Daniel eventually gets frustrated, asking when he will start real karate. It's only when Mr. Miyagi opens the eyes to the fact that he was learning karate all along. Waxing the car and painting the fence harnessed movements in his body that protected him against punches and kicks. It all came together, and Daniel was now a force to be reckoned with on the mat. The habit I'm talking about here is persistence in power. It's a mighty weapon that if used consistently, it will win you the match.
It was key to what I had to do, is owning it through the whole process, recognizing a gift, and disciplining myself not to give up because I didn't see the immediate results that I wanted, because of all the long-term effects of childhood trauma that were just damaged at the time, but had paid itself forward into this situation and negative skill set that I had developed over the years.
When we build destructive habits over time, they also take time to undo, okay? Some of Michael's changes his wife noticed right away. But what I love about Michael's story is that when he didn't get results right away, he still kept at it. He tapped into the power of persistence, and he vouches for it as well. And the benefits are not just in the goal you set for yourself, like winning your wife back or breaking old habits. The rewards are tenfold. The positivity trickles into every aspect of your life.
I've worked out. I've lost 46 pounds. I followed you guys to the T. It's kind of an interesting thing. And so now I listen to the things she's asking for and the things that she's always said it, and I just tuned it out. So part of being right for her is tuning in and listening and paying attention, and then doing something about everything that she's asked me that works for me, that's right for me, that I can do.
Yeah.
And she's recognized. And so the beauty of it is that, I'm just excited about growing more. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning.
Persistence was a game changer for Michael, just as much as taking ownership and recognizing the rewards were. You too can gain powerful results when you simply apply them to your life. Now listen, if you can relate to any part of Michael's story, and if your marriage is failing and your best efforts are just pushing her further away, and you don't really know why, you feel hopeless, click the link down below to get a free marriage evaluation call if you are fully committed to investing in yourself emotionally and financially. We only take calls with guys who can fully commit.